Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Senator Ron Johnson earlier said he would retire after his second term serving the Senate. Will Trump's early endorsement encourage him to run again? The San Francisco Board of Education in January decided to strip Washington, Lincoln, and Jefferson from public school names. But this decision has gotten the board into a mess of legal fights. What will they do now? It's a big win for the people of Pennsylvania. The state has reached a settlement with an election watchdog to remove dead citizens from voter rolls. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. If former President Trump tells you you are great and should run again, what would you do? The other day, Trump told Republican Senator Ron Johnson to run, even though he has not yet announced that he is running, and I certainly hope he does. I am giving my complete and total endorsement to Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. He is brave, he is bold, he loves our country and our military and our vets. He will protect our Second Amendment and everything else we stand for. It is the kind of courage we need in the U.S. Senate. He has no idea how popular he is. Run, Ron, run. The interesting thing about this is, during his 2016 re-election campaign, Johnson pledged he would not seek a third term in 2022. On March 6, the Wisconsin State Journal reported that Johnson had recently told the media that pledge to retire is on my mind. It was my preference then, and I would say it's probably my preference now. Is Johnson leaning towards retiring after his second term? He then added a big twist. I think that pledge was based on the assumption we wouldn't have Democrats in total control of the government, and we're seeing what I would consider the devastating and harmful effects of Democrats' total control just ramming things through. Johnson was one of Trump's staunchest supporters in the Senate. As the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, he led several Senate hearings on election irregularity throughout last December. In March, Johnson cast serious doubt over the necessity of Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID package. He forced a full reading of the 600-page long bill before the Senate vote, which took 11 hours. But with a Democratic majority in the chamber, the bill passed along the party line under a budget reconciliation process. The Democrats now plan to use the budget process again to push through Biden's multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure plan. It becomes increasingly important for Republicans to win back at least one seat in 2022 to redeclare a majority for the balance of power. With Trump's words of encouragement, will Ron Johnson run for another 6 years as Senator of Wisconsin? Let's wait and see. There's buzz that Donald Trump could be back in the office in the very near future. But hold your horses, his return would not be as president first, but as Speaker of the House. There has been speculation in Washington that former President Trump may be planning to play a major role in the upcoming 2022 midterm elections. The midterms have the potential to greatly influence the future of Biden's term in office. Aides to the former president said that Trump's current focus is electing friendly Republicans in 2022. And if it helps the GOP regain the majority, there will be a growing support for installing Trump as House Speaker, allowed under House rules. Though Trump wouldn't be an elected representative himself, House rules allow for the majority to select someone outside of the House to serve in the position. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has joined Fox News Media as a contributor. Fox News CEO Suzanne Scott announced on Thursday. In her statement, she said, Mike Pompeo is one of America's most recognized and respected voices on foreign policy and national security issues. I look forward to his contributions across our range of platforms to share his distinctive perspective with our millions of viewers. Pompeo will be a commentator across all Fox News media platforms, including Fox Business Network's daytime and primetime programming. He probably has already been Fox News' most frequently interviewed official from the Trump administration. I intend to give viewers a candid, no-nonsense look at geopolitics, international relations, and the America First policies that help chart the course for unprecedented American prosperity and security, Pompeo said in the announcement. The press release also noted Pompeo's success serving as the director of the CIA before becoming Secretary of State under former President Donald Trump, in which he was instrumental in the decision to strike top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, along with orchestrating the administration's maximum pressure campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran, which brought the Middle East closer to peace. Some speculations say Pompeo might also be considering entering the 2024 presidential race, although he hasn't personally made any comment on this rumor. On March 26, Pompeo visited Iowa and spoke during a breakfast at the Westside Conservative Club in Urbandale. Iowa traditionally hosts the first nominating contest of the Republican Party. Some reports see Pompeo's visit to Iowa as a sign of positioning himself for 2024.
And that in the end, our faith and the good works that come behind it will lead America to continue to be the greatest nation. And that Kim Young-chol will be wrong. And that America will be the country that comes out in a way that delivers good outcomes for our people and for people all across the world.
Pennsylvania agrees to remove deceased citizens from its voter rolls. American conservative legal group Public Interest Legal Foundation filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania in November 2020. The lawsuit claims some 21,000 registrants who had died were still on the state's voter rolls at the time of the 2020 presidential election. On April 7th, the legal group announced they have reached a settlement with the Pennsylvania Department of State. Pennsylvania agrees to compare its voter registration database with the Social Security Death Index and direct all county election commissions to remove dead registrants. The Public Interest Legal Foundation found about 40% of the 21,000 deceased voters have been dead for more than 5 years, and 10% have been dead for more than 10 years. President of the legal group, J. Christian Adam, said in an announcement, "This marks an important victory for the integrity of elections in Pennsylvania. It is important not to have dead voters active on the rolls for 5, 10, or even 20 years. This settlement fixes that." The case was originally filed in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. This is a big win for the battle of demanding election integrity for the American people. Many Americans have had fanciful thoughts or fantasies about China. China is a country with 5,000 years of history, one of the longest in the world. It's an ancient country which America barely has any resemblance to. But today's China is no longer the one you learned in history books. Or more precisely, ever since communism took hold in 1949, China is different. I came across a great article by John Horvat II on American Thinker yesterday. Horvat says after President Richard Nixon's infamous trip to Red China in 1972, the West had deceived itself into believing that being nice to China and opening the country up would expose the communist nation to the free world. And dictators of the CCP would want some change and follow the West to free the Chinese people. But this thinking has been so wrong. Before I continue sharing some of Horvat's great insights, I want to make a clear distinction between the Chinese people and the CCP. The CCP doesn't represent the values of the Chinese. The Chinese Communist Party is the one to be held accountable for its crimes against human rights and its dishonesty with the rest of the world. Although we haven't learned of any communist dictator who would be interested in converting to democracy, Horvat says the wishful thinking that communist China will change revolves around several myths about the country. The first myth is that by introducing a free market system into China, the leadership would gradually assume a capitalistic-like scheme that would be communist in name only. The West has long asserted that the Chinese have abandoned Marxist ideology and embraced world markets. That might be true for many Chinese, but the country is run by the CCP, which have never stopped insisting that it is genuinely communist. To me, that might be the only important fact that the CCP didn't hide. The recent development of Xi's dictatorship in issues of suppressing Hong Kong and the Muslim Uyghurs offered bitter testimony that nothing has changed. Another myth is that China is so integrated into the global economy that it cannot be a threat. The reality is that the West has been feeding the CCP and turned it into a monster. Not only are many countries dependent upon the communist China, but they are now threatened by the monster. The third myth is communist China is a shining example of the free market. Horvat says China has indeed gone from being a hopeless economic basket case to a vibrant power. However, this progress is not because of the free market. In fact, communist China has always been on the opposite side. The CCP routinely breaks trade agreements and shamelessly steals intellectual property from the West. It uses slave labor to produce cheap goods. China's economy is riddled with state planning and debt. The country's shadow banking system is notoriously corrupt. The CCP controls every detail of the economy through its party members in every major industry. The nation is an environmental disaster. China is an example of everything the free market is not supposed to be. Now, during the past 4 years, the Trump administration helped unveil the true picture of China to Americans. Trump was fighting a trade war with the CCP for its unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. He abandoned U.S. investments to a number of Chinese companies that have close ties with the military. The Trump administration sanctioned multiple CCP officials for severe human rights abuses. All these are reminders to the world that Red China has never changed. Public attitudes towards the CCP are hardening. A Pew Research Center poll from October 2020 says the percentage of Americans who have an unfavorable view of China rose from 47% in 2017 to 73% in 2020. That's a 26% increase. Older people often see China more negatively. The percentage holding an unfavorable view of China among 50 plus is as high as 81%. Now, the more realistic vision of communist China transcends partisan lines. On April 8th, Democrat Senator Bob Menendez and Republican Senator Jim Risch announced their bipartisan proposal, the Strategic Competition Act of 2021, to counter the CCP's rising political and financial power. The proposed bill seeks to send more security assistance to countries in the Indo-Pacific region, impose sanctions in response to human rights abuses in Xinjiang, double down on federal government's efforts to combat CCP's attacks on U.S. intellectual property, monitor China's military acquirements, and enhance U.S.-Taiwan partnership. Senator Menendez says the United States government must be clear-eyed and sober about Beijing's intentions and actions, and collaborate our policies and strategy accordingly. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee will review the bill and vote on April 14th to consider bipartisan legislation. Some of the most prominent Democratic governors partnered with CVS to distribute COVID-19 vaccines to their constituents. This list of governors include Gavin Newsom of California, Andrew Cuomo of New York, and Ralph Northam of Virginia. CVS is currently the largest pharmacy chain in the United States by number of locations and total prescription revenue. It started vaccinating eligible populations on March 31st. Before that, CVS is credited with opening the first private sector COVID-19 testing site in the country. Distributing vaccines is a lucrative business. CBS News reported that Publix, like any other private company, can charge Medicare $40 a shot to administer the vaccine. CVS has a good reason to become one of the vaccine administers, but new speculation suggests it might have achieved its goal through bribing. The Washington Free Beacon obtained and extensively reviewed Democrats' 2020 campaign finance reports. Its analysis found less than 4 months before the pharmacy announced a partnership with the California Department of Health, CVS donated $31,000 to Newsom's campaign on October 14, 2020. CVS donated $12,000 to Northam's between 2017 and 2018. It also sent $20,000 to the Commonwealth Victory Fund, the primary fundraising arm of General Assembly Democratic Caucus, on December 17, 2020, which happened to be weeks before Northam announced the vaccine partnership with the pharmacy. In New York, CVS donated $170,000 in 2020 to the Democratic Party, but it didn't stop there. The company contributed $30,000 each to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. CVS employees donated a staggering $450,000 to Biden's presidential campaign. In January, we reported that the San Francisco Board of Education made a unilateral decision to strip Washington, Lincoln, and others from public school names due to, quote, racist concerns. Their controversial decision has received massive backlash. After multiple lawsuits filed from the city and school alumni, the San Francisco Public School Board reversed its decision to rename buildings. The board in January voted to rename schools that had historic figures such as former President George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Thomas Jefferson in their names. The board claimed those public figures were, quote, liberal activists who are now deemed to be racist, anti-woman, or anti-gay. In February, the board delayed the effort until school reopened. But this week, on April 6th, the board voted without opposition not to pursue renaming the schools. Now, Paul Scott, the attorney representing plaintiffs opposed to the renaming decision, said, "We all share the same values of reflecting on our history and trying to uplift disadvantaged groups, particularly those most oppressed. But the process has to be fair and open for the end result to endear and be respected by the community." Scott said the board members could have been dedicating their energy to getting students back into school, but instead, they created a legal mess and left San Francisco residents with no alternative but to file suit against the board to clean it up. School board president Gabriela Lopez admitted in February there were some mistakes in the process and promised to consult historians at nearby universities going forward. However, in January, Lopez claimed the renaming decision was important and came timely. She even praised the board's effort as beyond racism tied to slavery, which condemns wider, quote, racist symbols and white supremacy culture we see in our country. Many parents in San Francisco were appalled by the decision that time. Many didn't agree that the public school board has the authority to determine who should be honored with public school names. At minimum, these board members have rather a distorted and biased view towards some of the most prominent American leaders in our history. A director from Families for San Francisco said, "We would like to have our historical experts to provide historical context as we are evaluating people from the past with today's sensibilities." And that's it for today, my friends. Please like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. You can join me on the Eye Opener Telegram chat room. You can also follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Telegram. Now don't forget, please sign up to the email list so that we can stay in contact with each other. I want to thank you all, and I'll see you next time.